Good afternoon, family. How you doing? Welcome to Black Watch with brother Mickey Jordan, and he calls me the professor. And I'll gladly take that title. Elliot McCants. We're here today, this Tuesday afternoon, to hopefully give you some enlightenment. Last time we were here, we were talking about the beginnings of humankind, Homo sapiens sapien, the form that we're in now. There's been some new light shed coming from Egypt, who just built a $2 billion museum, right? But they said that they have over 700,000 years of ancient Kemetic history. Now, if that's the truth, the numbers that we were talking about before, 700,000 years, if that's true, now we have to push our timeline for human development, especially coming up the Nile or the Hapi River, back 700,000 years of ancient Kemetic history in a $2 billion museum. And there are still some places that they have not found yet. So that, in my small mathematical guesstimation, would put human development back to at least 1.2, 1.3, maybe 1.4 a million years ago. I'm not going to say billion, million years ago, because the Earth is only estimated to be 4.5 billion years old. The sun is supposed to be 10 billion years old. So humankind, after going through all of the changes that happened on the Earth, humankind, if we go back 3.5, 3.8 million years with Dignesh, we talked about before, it's Lucy. Then now we're talking about Homo sapiens sapien, and just the Delta region or ancient Kemet being 700,000 years, it changes everything. That changes everything. So I've got a few things I'd like to show you all if we can, starting from there, so to give us some talking points. Good afternoon, little mama. Good afternoon, Miss Taliba Binta. We appreciate you all being here. So we're going to go, and I'm going to build on this presentation, right? So we're going to go from where we are now, right? So the title of this presentation, and we'll continue to build on it, is Who We Are from Ancient Times Till Now. Now, that's our title. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay. This is Alkebalan. It's also may be called, if you talk to our ancient historians, Dr. Bien, Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Arthur Schomburg, and a few even more modern historians. It was also was called Tameri, T-A capital M-E-R-R-I, Tameri. And so you can see the vastness of the landmass. And you can see the ridges and the rivers and everything else. Now, this is a map that was created by African people, right? Alkebalanian people. So if they have this map, and this map, I believe, came from Timbuktu. If they have this map with no political lines, as we can see, oh, well, very few, but it's their political lines. This map was drawn probably 2,700 years ago. So that means that they knew every inch of the landmass before Europeans came and so-called mapped it out and definitely divided it. If you look up at the top in the upper, as I'm looking at it, in the upper right, you see what they call ancient Egypt. And if you follow the river down, right, the river down as it curves there around that's in Ethiopia, and coming down to Sudan, all the way down to where the beginnings are and what they called Lake Victoria, but it wasn't. Lake Victoria is in the mountains and it flows down. So it pushes the water down the White Nile and the Blue Nile, the White Hoppy and the Blue Hoppy, so it can, and it flows out into the Delta region, out into the Mediterranean Ocean. You go to the next one. Yeah. Okay, so now for all African women, this is the partial bone structure of deep necks. This is what they found in the Old Dubai Gorge, which I mentioned last week. And it has partial remains that are estimated by carbon dating to be over 3.5, 3.8 million years old. So the mitochondrial DNA that you all carry comes from her. So that's y'all African. So stop acting like you something else. And I don't care where you were born at. Genetically, you come from here. So it doesn't matter that, oh, I was born in Canada. I was born in Mexico. I was born in the Bahamas. I was born in Puerto Rico. Even Puerto Rico is Portuguese and African put together, which is where you get Puerto Rico at. I was born in Cuba. Doesn't matter. You're African. Genetically, we're African. The only issue that we have, which people make an issue, which it really shouldn't be, is we may not know exactly where we were born, exactly where we genetically come from. But we were all born there. I think Dr. Kaba, in one of his books, Shabaka Stone, says it takes over 1 million people on both sides. So 500,000 on one side, 500,000 on the other side, going back that many generations to bring us to who we are now. It's a whole lot of people that made sure that you got to be here because they thought of us, thought of me being here and Uncle Mick being here. There were our people in ancient times, before there was time, thought about us being here in the present. That's a pretty big responsibility. Okay. And for us to have that understanding, right? Have the understanding that the gene pool that we have, regardless of everything else, there's 500,000 people on both sides, mother side and father side, and that gene pool is still pretty strong and it still flows the way that it does. That's pretty deep. That's pretty serious. So, in all honesty, there's somebody in your family line that looks just like you, and you all are related. The unfortunate social experiment that took place when we were brought from there here, and also when Islam entered into Africa the way that it did with the Hyksos, caused some creation and some confusion, but it didn't change spirit. So, ladies, those of you all that are listening, this is your great, too many greats backs grandmother that made sure that you have part of her DNA in you as an African woman. So you're not an African American. You're an African in America because genetically you go back to Africa. Yeah. It's how it goes.
Yeah, because once you get out of there, inbreeding,
Right.
The mixed breeding. Let me say
Right.
that the mixed breeding.
Yeah, but even at that happened then. Not as much as now. Not as much as what they were doing purposefully now. Especially during the period of enslavement. But genetically, that doesn't change the fact that now women can today go and find their mitochondrial DNA and see that it's connected still to her. Yeah, 3.5, 3.8 million years ago, 3,800,000 years ago. you still, her DNA is that strong. It's still in every black woman on the planet. That's a pretty powerful sentiment. That's pretty powerful. And no matter what other group you mix it with, it's still there. That's how powerful it is. Can't get no closer to God than that. You're related to the very first hominid genetically, no matter what she looked like. All right, we can go to the next one, big bro. All right, so now this is a picture from one of the temples of soldiers or workers because they're carrying feathers in ancient Egypt, in ancient Kemet. Let me not call it Egypt because it's not Egypt. It only becomes Egypt when the Greeks come in and mess stuff up. Man, Alexander wasn't great. He was a thief and a liar. So Alexander the Great, that y'all want to call him, he wasn't great but of anything but stealing so he could give back to the Greek people, who, as we talked about last time, could not withstand being in the temple schools they had to dedicate 33 years of their life to in order to become master teachers. They couldn't do it. But if we look at these pictures, even with the light that shows the brightness of the skin, they're all dark complected. The only reason why you have lighter complected um, ancient or Kemetic people is because of the invasion of the Hyksos, and they're still over there. But as you can see, this was work, and you can see you have those men there who are having conversations with each other. With I'm sorry, excuse me, with each other. Because you see one's facing his head back and one's facing his head forward, and they're talking and walking at the same time. So again, Egypt was pulled out of Africa only because European people wanted to claim ownership of something that was not theirs, because that's how great it is. Ancient Kemet was so great. There's a book written by one of my, and I'll call him one of my teachers because I've learned much from his writings. His name is Gerald Massey. He wrote a book, a set of books called Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, which is his greatest set of works. Book of Beginnings and Natural Genesis. He's written some other things as well. But in Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, he talks about how Egypt was so great in its knowledge and what it gave to the world all over the place that it gave everything, math, science, reading, writing, all of these things he gave to people in all of the world, that people took part of it, bits and pieces of it, and took it to other places to start civilizations. That's how great ancient Kemet was. Even on its last parts. So if you go back and read the destruction of black civilization, you'll see where there was a pharaoh named Pepi II, maybe Pepi the First, his father, Pepi the First, who was on the throne for 90 years, died at 135, with no quarrels, no squabbles, no insanity inside his rulership. That doesn't happen in the squabbles and the insurrection stuff. That happens everywhere, but it doesn't happen until much later, as Egypt is waning in its power, as Kemet is waning in its power. So now, going back to what I said earlier, if the true numbers are 700,000 years instead of what they try and timeline things at in ancient Kemet, or it was only 6,000 years or three. Are we talking about 700,000 years and people living to be 135 years old? And it wasn't until modern invasions took place that people lived less time. 700,000 years is a long time to be giving things to the world. So ancient Egypt, light of the world, is the truth because in his 2-volume works, he talks about how much the world got from ancient Kemet. Reading, writing, math, science, literature,
music.
all of it, everything gives to the world. So much so that they, being nomadic, people went to different parts of the continent to start civilizations. And the interconnectedness is the spiritual systems, how they worship, the foods that they eat, and part of the language. And those things do not change until the Hyksos, or they call them the Shepherd Kings, come in and make those changes. Because they only lived in the Delta region for a while until they understood that what they would do, and this is in Chancellor Williams' book, Destruction of Black Civilization, what they would do was say, well, I'm going to send my daughter down there to marry somebody. I'm going to send my daughter to marry your son.
The Hissites?
Yeah, the Hyksos, yes. Yeah, that's all right. The Hissites are later on. They on they come later. But yeah, you got it. But they would send their daughters down to marry their sons. And of course, now I can be part of the royal family. If I'm part of the royal family, then I can I can start to make decisions because I can whisper in her ear what we need in order to be able to gain power. It is. That is exactly. But that's where it comes from. Okay, that's where it comes from. That's that's exactly where it comes from, right? So even talking about the stories from the Bible, if you go back and look at the pyramid texts, those are exactly the same stories. The difference is the pyramid texts are written in stone. And your biblical text is written on paper. Stone that's been around, if we go by the story, now the new news, 700,000 years, which makes us change the age of the Sphinx and makes us change the age of the pyramids. Yeah, because 700,000 years just in ancient Kemet, and then you from there you got Kush, you got Nubia, Kush, Punt. Those are even older. So we going back up 1, 2, 3 million, 2.3 million years now.
One thing is true, them people have mothers and fathers.
Yes. So being born 3.8 million years ago, and then you mate, and then you start these, then eventually there's an evolution that takes place that creates what we look like.
To be honest with you, when they be talking about, like, I get what you're saying when they talk about the African American.
Yeah.
Because we were African.
Well, we were brought over here, right.
And then with the new breed, because if you look at it, we are a different breed because of the intermixing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was for the best, but a couple of them presidents, the slave master dipped in quarters.
So George Washington had slaves, so
So, so many of them kids that got,
But that was the unfortunate social experiment that took place to destroy, right, this African part of it. So now I'm an African American, but I don't identify with where I genetically come from. Yeah, absolutely. Right. But you're not in a position, nor do you exist to challenge Kemet at its height. Right. Ramesses' grandson, Thutmose III. Again, you have a paper version and you have a version written in stone.
They still sound the same.
That because one was co-opted from the other.
Facts.
Okay, one was adopted. So Moses was supposed to be Ramesses' brother,
Right.
right? If we follow the story, he was a Ramesses' brother, knowledgeable in all the wisdom of ancient Egypt from the Temple of On, which would have made Moses, if he existed, a priest. So, if once again, if he existed, he would have been a priest because you had to be knowledgeable in all the wisdom of ancient Egypt. So he would have been his brother's advisor and not somebody to go and challenge his brother to be stupid enough to lead people not out of the desert that you would have known about because you are knowledgeable in all the wisdom of ancient Egypt and was a priest in the temple of On or On. It's really the name of A-N, On. So how could you have people following you? And they're making me scratch my head. Why? How could you have people supposedly follow you that you challenge your brother, but yet you were taken care of by your family, the royal family, because your brother was a pharaoh? So you have to make a story different in order to say this is us that came from these people, because you adopted some of their ideology in order to create Israel,
Right.
the children of Israel. Now, here's something interesting. The word Israel comes from three African gods: Isis, I-S, Ra, the sun god, and Elohim, the god named in ancient Ethiopia. Israel. I-S, Isis, Ra, sun god, Elohim, E-L.
That's how you get Israel.
Israel. And where did they get that stuff from? If we follow Moses, and Moses was knowledgeable in all the wisdom of ancient Egypt and was a priest in the temple of On or An, and it's in your book, go read it. Stop listening to people tell you stories. Go look in your book because it's in there. Why would you challenge your brother to the throne and if you're getting taken care of? Because we have to tell our story. Because, we gotta move out of the. We, but they were not slaves, and slaves did not build the temples because you can't have a person that's not literate build temples that intricate.
And they still ain't figured it out though, because how you gonna build something if you got how they still make them to this day?
Yeah, modern technology is not ancient technology, and nothing anywhere near it. And then we have people, some of the groups that we have that decided they want to pop up and talk about certain things that they have no clue about. And then you have other people like Graham Hancock who will say certain things because people don't want to give African people credit for the genius.
You know, because you've been told all your life, we found you. You was in the jungles, bones, and that's a depict. You know all the movies.
Yeah,
When you
Tarzan was one of the worst. One of the worst ones. Yeah,
well, don't nobody say nothing about that.
yeah.
That movie was.
It was a racist movie, no
Yeah.
different than Birth of a Nation, that
Right.
was written in 1915 by Cecil B. DeMille.
Right.
Same thing. So you always have to do this. So how in the world did Livingston, and we're moving up, we still got to go back. We're moving up. How did Livingston find a way in order to be able to stumble along in Africa? Well, when everything goes in a cycle, right? Right now we're turning. It's fall. The leaves are falling off. 6 months from now, it's gonna be spring. That's the cycle of things. Same thing happened in ancient times. There, you're not gonna go fight them at their height. Number one, you don't exist. Number two, you don't have the power, technology, or the mindset to fight them. Thutmose III died, and for 200 years after his death, the Chinese was still sending tribute to ancient Kemet. 200 years he been gone. And somebody went and spied, found out he was no longer living. That's when they stopped sending tribute. But they didn't go attack. They didn't go, oh, we just going to go and attack them and get stuff back because they did this to us. Why? Because the first dynasty, from my limited reading of Chinese history, was African, started by African people. The Han, H-A-N, the Han dynasty, started by African people. It's like if you go to Vietnam and some of these other, it wasn't the soldiers that stayed over there and didn't come back from Vietnam that you got these dark complected people. It's because they was dark complected in the first place. In Japan, they still have the Inui, which is the black people that live in the mountains, the mountain people, dark skinned people. Good afternoon, family. Second, Egypt. Okay. All right, we'll talk about that. So, yes, little mama, you are the mothers of civilization. The issue is the corruption that's taken place that you all don't see that with yourself anymore. Yeah, all of the black statues around the world have been stolen by European people in order to claim that they was them and not where it really come from. And some of the scholars that I've worked with have said if they had a way to steal a Sphinx and all of the other things, they would have them in the museums too. Mr. Cooper, good evening. Glad you could join us. And for all of the mothers of civilization and the mothers of children, what's the requirement of you to get to really truly know yourself? Right. So hopefully, given this information, will make you get up and go like, look, I got to change how I do what I do because if you're the first, if you're part of the first, that's how close to God you are, and not some intermediary got to be there. All right. So, yes, sir. I got you. Let me blow this up. Before we get back to the next one. Yeah. So this is a little bit better view. And you can see there's the Kushite Empire, and right above that would be Nubia. And then if you see in the Delta region at the very can you move the mouse over a little bit? No. Just move it up to the very end. Up. Right. Yep. Come down just a little bit more. Right there. That's the Delta region. That's where the Hyksos first settled. So once again, destruction of black civilization. That's where the Hyksos settled before they started to sell their daughters basically into marriage so they can gain some power. But if we continue to come down the Hopi River, you see, yep, just come straight down. Yep, keep on coming down. Yep, a little bit more. See the split there? That's where what they call the blue Happy and the white Happy split, and they join together to create 4,000 miles of civilization. People didn't have to fight for food. They didn't have to do anything. It was just there. It grew abundantly. So they could just go pick it and eat. So you have time because you're not fighting. You have time to be able to grow civilization. You have time to be able to grow laws. You have time to be able to study nature in order to understand how God works. I hope and pray that we never have the sun rise in the west. Sun rise in the west, Earth twisted the wrong way. We got a problem. We got a big problem if the laws of the universe switch up on us, because then it's over with. You're talking about an apocalypse. That's it. If nature decided to change one law, this is where the humanity's finished.
Let's see, that should tell you how you know you got a God, a supreme being, because look how this thing was set up.
Yeah.
look how everything obeys the laws of nature.
Absolutely,
Like
everything
you
has
said, the
to.
way it gotta go, because just say it, just stop spinning.
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah.
It's done.
So how everything is set up, but only ones who not going by the laws of nature is man.
Yeah. Well,
and we're not in harmony
because we've decided to abuse nature and be corrupted by money and power, right? So there was a phrase that was talked about last week: power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So most real indigenous groups of people take only what they need and leave the rest, and they don't over abuse it and overuse it because they're interested in being in balance with nature. Now you have people that are only interested in how can I use it to my advantage and take advantage of other people. And that's all it's about, right? So remember when cell phones used to be the big Motorola flip joints? Okay. So when they found a mineral in the Congo River, all of a sudden there was an Ebola outbreak. Killed a bunch of people in the along the Congo River. Now we got these phones. So you purposely disrupted life for dollars.
But that's what I'm saying. But if you knew really where you came from, see, most of our history started slavery. Just being honest, what they teach you in America. Most of the black man, black woman, your history gonna start with slavery.
Right.
You don't know where you came from.
No.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Even when you watch all these African movies, I mean the slave movies, the slave movie, you see running around, it's the image that they put out there. Like they didn't wear clothes, they just go back to Shaka Zulu. It's been like it's been an image of to say this is how, and this is what's crazy. Because the way they portray Africa to us over here, and then how they portray us to Africa over there, why you think we got a disconnect?
Yeah, because as long as you make sure that neither group learns the truth, then you can't, or you can control the narrative. But once people learn the truth, the narrative now is different. So with little mama saying, yes, love, you're connected to Dignesh. That's your great, whatever, however many greats grandmother. You control her. You have her DNA in you. Now, what you gonna do with that? Now, what you gonna do? You have to now change the narrative for yourself and your family. If you're gonna be and understand that you're the progenitors of civilization, and Dr. and Minister Farrakhan talks about this too. About I don't care nothing about nobody's Islam. I don't care whether you're Muslim, Christian. I don't care. But understand this: even those stories come from Kemet. They are not separate from Kemet.
Yeah, no, see, I think where it became the confusion in it, because I remember when Brother Wesley Muhammad when he did the same with Ralph Ray Nagin, when him and Ray Nagin had a debate, he said maybe when he was talking about Kemet, he was talking about the Marionette, what they were saying. If it wasn't, but it is in the wall, it was in the temple.
Yeah.
It's just a different name. Like people get so confused when they say God or you say Allah. What languages you speaking in?
Right.
Same God.
Yeah.
It's just a different language.
That's all. But it's God.
And it seemed like, but they got us so confused on how they do it. They will have you thinking that you got really 10,000 different denominations.
No, it's only one pathway to God.
Right.
And that's all the way through. Okay. Let's dispel some myths. Right. Man was born through a woman. Woman was considered to be God. And there's a book out that was written in the early 1900s called When God Was a Woman. And then after the author put the book out, they killed him. Shit. Okay. After the author put the book out, they killed him. It's called When God Was a Woman. Okay. Now, you change the narrative because then you have to make, go to that next one. I got you. Yeah, no, not that one. We already did that one. Yep, that one right there. There we go. Now, so you have to change the narrative of the woman. So now you remove her from Africa. You tell her, and I'm gonna say Africa this time instead of I'm gonna go. We'll keep it on Kibalana or Tamari. You remove her from Africa. You make her a second class citizen so that you can control and dominate her. Right? So if you make her a second class citizen, then you take the story and you write the story and say she's the one that caused the fall of mankind. Because then now you can control almost every woman at that point. Because now what you do is you reverse the roles between the man and the woman. Because now she is considered to be the one that was the one that picked from the fruit, the tree of knowledge or whatever tree that they said was in the Garden of Eden. But the Garden of Eden was in Africa. Even if you look in the Bible and follow where it's triangulated with the rivers, it's in Africa. So that meant that if we say Adam and Eve and we use that story, and it's really Asor and Aset. And that's the story we're going to really use. But if you use that story, they were African people. Then all of a sudden it says she had children, and she had 2 boys and 3 girls. The third girl is never mentioned. So inside of that story of their birth or their family, Cain kills Abel. But why now? If you go read the Torah, which is the Jewish version, and they only use the first 5 books of the Bible, they don't use the rest of it. The other sister is the reason why that one killed the other, that Cain killed Abel. Because he wanted the other sister to be his wife, because they were both married to the sisters, right? And then there was a third sister who was more beautiful than, oh, yes, sir.
You said Cain and Abel?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, they just switched that story.
Well, the Jews got that story. Not the
they had it.
No, they don't tell that story. They tell it.
So talk about the one in their book.
Yeah.
In their book.
Yeah. So it's not in the Bible. Right. Yeah. So they're not gonna put that in the Bible. Not putting that in the Bible. Yeah. Yeah. You can't put that in the Bible, because then you got you have to pull stuff out, because you can't give credit, number one, to women, and number two, you can't launch the Israeli group of people if you put that story in there. It's like you really not going to sit up there and talk about how Moses was this particular person, but yet you look at the pyramid text and you see Ramesses II, but you don't see Moses.
But yeah, because even in the pyramids it tell you about air travel.
Right. But you don't see Moses in the pyramid text. If he was Ramesses' brother, a priest knowledgeable in all the wisdom of ancient Egypt, and a priest in the temple of On, then where is he on the pyramid text? Why is he not buried in the Valley of the Kings like all the rest of them were?
I mean, but if you look at it, it's more that's what I'm saying. They didn't hear it so much, because if you were to read the Bible, I can't think what verse it's in, but it tell you it's piece of a great mother book. So where's you know what I'm saying? It's telling you that's just piece from a mother book.
Yeah, right.
So
the pyramid text is the mother.
So you just getting a fraction.
Right.
But that's the thing. Why is they not telling? Because this what
why would you tell people? Why would you? I mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why would you tell people this is who you come from and this is who you are, and none of these other stories ever existed? Because we had to take something in order to create ourselves. So we took the greatest. Okay, remember there used to be a movie called The Greatest Story Ever Told? Okay. But they're not telling you that part. Because, right. Because then you got to give credit to African people, where you're doing everything to remove African people from the scene. And you can't, because everything that you look at Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was designed off the memory of Benjamin Banneker, but it's designed off a city in Kemet called Memphis.
Facts.
The circle, when you go down G Street, all of the way, that's Now, here's the other part about that. The three circles that are in DC
Mhm.
are supposedly replicated to line up with the three Sirius stars, just like the pyramids.
So once again, you say who designed that?
That's Benjamin Banneker, an African man.
But see, that's what I'm saying. When who would be the one that can wake it up that you see this what it make me go to thinking. You already seen a Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
You saw Rosewood. You've seen the different spots that they was building. Do you think these people that they brought over, that they came over on the ships, were really on the bellies of the ship? You really think these were people that was in the jungles?
No,
These
they
were
brought
people that
scientists
had-
and everybody else
Yeah,
over
see, but
here.
they won't say that. That's what my thing. That's what my thing is really with them. Where I be frustrated is like, why y'all only want to give us the history? Yeah, you can show starting with slavery, but that's all you think that that these people came from. When you go watch all the shows, how they was coming, how they did them, and these people that y'all call slaves, you didn't want to let read or write.
Right.
Remember, they couldn't read or write. But how was these people who couldn't read or write had the
Ability.
DNA?
Mhm.
Because remember,
It's in us. It's in
you.
us.
Who
And
can unlock it?
and I see Miss Tracy Jones makes a valid point. So therefore, what you do is in this social experiment that we're still a part of, because we won't come together and be our own unit and unified group. We still want to run out here and think just because we can go live with another group of people and I ain't got to stay here no more and I ain't got to do this or that or the other, we lose because we followed somebody in 1966 that said, and then when he became very clear that we messed up,
Yeah.
he changed the narrative, but you wanted to integrate with something that didn't want to do nothing but strip you of your power, and they show that all the time.
Yeah. And that's what I hate, how they push ML King out there.
But they had to. You got to, because you can't. The opposite is Malcolm.
Right. No, but I'm saying right now, I hate how they use him now.
Yeah.
Like how they say when they talk about "I have a dream" speech, but they never talk about the king when he says, "I think I integrated my people into a burning house."
No, because then what that means is now you got a revolutionary similar to Malcolm, but he never says anything about defending yourself. Yeah. Right? What he does kind of hint at is an economic plan, right, which later on, I want to say Hosea Williams picked up. I have to check back with my sources about that. I saw something on video about that. But we going back, right, before the social experiment that continues to today, right, if we don't do that, if we don't make that move, and even if we knew that they were going to do things that they did, blew our cities up or whatever, and we continue to go and rebuild, the whole point of the integration movement was to sap our resources from us. Right. So, the sisters making this point about the prisoner, the school to prison pipeline, and the third grade reading levels, and the fact that we're not reading the way we should. Well, that's all of our fault. Yeah, that's all of our fault.
That's on us. But that's what I'm saying. When you go look, it seems like because if you really go back and listen to what Abraham, because that's who they love to bring up, he freed the Negro. If you go look what he said, he didn't want an inch of light coming into the black.
Yeah.
See, they can't, like, they forgetting that they don't want to make it up to nothing. See, it's like it was always barriers put. It's like it's just barriers put. But with us, I think, like you say, when you go back to 1966, when they wanted to do, when we desegregated,
yeah, we made it was over with. Us. Yeah,
that was it. It crippled us because we went from when we was forced, we couldn't go nowhere but to our restaurant, to our groceries.
We had the greatest and highest test scores. There was a school, and I want to say it's down south, called Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School, who had the highest test scores in the country, and from everybody from the janitor to the principal was black. everybody understood you got to work twice as hard. You got to do this.
Right.
You know, it wasn't no, you could go home and you ain't got to worry about doing homework. There was no whining,
Right.
complaining. People wanted to go because it was like, oh, well, we beating everybody.
Right.
They, you know, I'm gonna answer her in a minute. We're beating everybody across the country. Ivy League schools, these other schools that were over here that you know, that were supposed to be better than our schools. And here we are working with beat up textbooks and barely no supplies, but we working hard because it's in us to do. If you building pyramids and cities and all of this other stuff and nations and building a world, what the heck do you think is in you for real? So in the social experiment of destroying that, then what we have to do is we have to rebuild because it's in us to rebuild. It's in us to rebuild.
Yeah.
You know, the desire is that if we're going to do that, is where do we gather the resources? And we have to remove the fact that we have an issue with trusting each other. That, you know, it's part of the experiment is if we start trusting each other again, then this ends. So you always have to create dissension. Remember, we talked about before, at one point in time, you had conscious rap.
Right.
And then what did they do? They had to throw in gangster rap. Now you got this mumble rap that everybody getting killed, you know, over some stupid stuff because you're not talking about anything. But you, oh man, we repping the hood. But it's not yours.
Yeah, you know what, and I understand that I was one of them youths that didn't understand that. We really, when you own the block, you own houses on the block.
You own the whole block.
Right.
You just ain't running around there being destructive.
Right. So
you're tearing up stuff. Hey man, you better get okay.
That's what they show us because
there was two movies. There was two movies.
Yeah.
Colors. Remember Colors?
Yeah, but you gotta go back and go look why they started it.
You gotta destroy that. Yeah.
Really, the gang started from they was really the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
You know, look where they started. When they destroyed the Black Panthers, you had them, you know, it was like fragments.
Right.
Really gangs from the ones I've been watching, they really came from over there in California. I'll be watching different channels like Kids, like different ones, historians of them. They go do it. They became gangs because they couldn't be caught. And what they don't never talk, it was white gangs that was whooping on the blacks if you got caught out.
The movie Gangs of New York. Go watch that movie. They tell you how that happened. Yeah.
They don't want to say that.
No, because you know the white is right, and we still got that insanity in our head. So therefore, anything that we put out there that we did, we glorifying that, but we denigrating what you did.
Right.
So therefore, Huey Newton, when he got killed in 87, Dr. Huey P. Newton, when he got killed in 87, it took, 10, 15 years before they found the brother that supposedly did it, that took the fall for taking his life. And then from what I read, and I got to go back and investigate it more, got slap on the wrist. Why? Right, you're right. You got rid of this person, and Bobby Seale turned 88 today. So happy birthday to Bobby Seale, who was his partner in creating but you can continue to distract people.
Yeah, and that's what they do. Look how they really did them. Because they will bring the traitors in. This what is so bad with us, and I say it every time. We accept everybody in, but everybody don't.
And see, and the interesting part about that is I see it all the time, where you have somebody love another group but not love you, and that is a real definition of insanity. I don't care nothing about you doing the same thing over again, trying to get a different result. The definition of insanity is loving somebody that hates you.
We do it every day,
all the time.
Yeah, you do. All you got to do is look at. If you go watch Germany, when they say they put the Jews in the ghettos, and I'm talking about
right.
Not the black Jews.
Right.
They put them in ghettos over there in Germany, right?
Right.
Why we can't see the ghettos we put over here in America?
Well, but because they were formerly occupied by white people, and we moved into those areas.
Right. Even when like we hear people, we need more police.
No, we don't need more police. You need to teach people how to act like they got some sense, and make sure that hey, look, if you mess up, you got a problem.
Yeah, but
and make sure you carry it out.
But see, that's the thing, though. how you see what's going on. To me, it's like you can see where it's less money, more problem.
But we don't. But okay. So then, if it's less money, why do you have the Koreans and the Chaldeans and everybody else opening stores up in our neighborhoods? There's money there.
Oh, fact.
We just are not organizing. What did Malcolm say, and what did Stokely Carmichael or Kwame Ture say? The only issue that we have is we are not organized.
Fact.
Our greatest issue is lack of organization. That's it. They come in there all the time buying stuff. Hi, Miss James. They come in there all the time buying stuff, putting up stores, and we go run into them all the time.
Just look where we at. I'm not knocking nobody for this because I know a lot that helped our community. The numbers. Y'all put the black man out, but now you can go to every liquor store where they got up in there.
Yeah, we can play lottery. Well, this is no different than you got all these dispensaries around when a guy 20 years ago got life for having a dime by a nickel bag that he might have been selling.
Fact.
And you ain't let him free now yet. But he got to be in there for the rest of his life, die. But yet you got all over the place. Right? Here where we live at, and then we're going to go back to well, baby girl, you're right. About but you also have to understand, and I'm quite sure that you do, considering what you've given us already, is how in the world they get those guns. Those guns don't just come in here scratched off and somebody build them in their basement. They know, they're very clear where they go, and they're just using that as bait to make some more money for the prison industrial complex. But let's go back to talk about the pyramids, and then we'll finish up talking about that. Okay, so the real name, this one. The real name, okay, we can do that. Okay. I can't recall the real name. The Greece called this the Sphinx. Now, this is the head of a pharaoh with a lion's body. If you look down at the bottom between the feet, you see a door. At one time, they opened that door to try and see what's inside the chambers of the Sphinx. And I'm going to get the real, actual Kemetic name for it. We're not going to call it the Sphinx. And all kind of crazy weather stuff happened there. So they immediately sealed the door shut. Okay. So that nobody could get into it. Now, if with a better picture, even though we see the lines of where and how it was built, with a better picture, there's a couple things that you see. At one time, they thought that the head was that of a woman, but it's not. It's the head of a man. The constellation Leo in the southern orientation was in power. And remember, we talked about the calendar being 25,000 years old, 25,870 years old, 60 years old. Right. So somebody had to calculate how long each constellation stayed in power. And each constellation stayed in power, not 30 days or 28 days like what we have here, but 2,155 years, 2,155 years. So at the time of Leo, and now with this new information, talking about 700,000 years of ancient Kemet, that puts the pyramids at a different age. That also puts the Sphinx at a different age. There was, at one time, all of the desert area was all lush green jungle. So I'm glad we had the conversation that we inserted in there a few minutes ago, because it's all connected. Ancient history and modern history is all connected because it's in our DNA. But of course, they want to tell you that we brought you over here as slave. And even if I do teach about slavery, and I do, I look at, okay, well, we did this and we still here. And we fought back all of the time. There was no such thing as the happy slave who was glad to be there. That's a story they portrayed. And even when we talk about the greatness of Harriet Tubman, we also got to remember that more people freed themselves, right? They fled, they went north. You know, if you go to Detroit and go along the Detroit River, there's a lighthouse over there by one of the casinos. If you look at the lighthouse, there's a point where people would leave and swim across. About 15 years ago, they put a lighthouse there. Now the Detroit River is pretty fast. We ain't talking about Olympic swimmers. You're talking about trying to get over maybe 100, 150 yards of water moving pretty quick. So either they swam across or found logs to float across or whatever so they could get to Detroit to get to Canada. Because they weren't safe in Windsor so much because it was still considered to be connected to Michigan. And parts of Michigan, Detroit is down, was to Detroit, Toledo, that area was considered to be part of slave stuff, part of slavery. So, yeah, click on that. So, in our story that we were talking about earlier, that is Ramesses II. That is his sarcophagus, which we now call coffin. And if you look in his hands, you see a crook and a flail. The shepherd carries a crook and a flail. What else do they say that the one who opens the way to his father carried? A shepherd's crook. He also carried a flail in order to keep the sheep in line. So that's where the crooks come from. So when we tell the story of Jesus or Yeshua, he carries a crook and a flail. They don't tell you he carries a flail. They tell you he gets flailed and near the end, but they don't tell you he carries a flail. They'll keep that sheep in line. If we say follow the story, and he carries a crook in order to bring the sheep back. So they don't leave the flock. He carries a flail just in case a predator comes. Ramesses II. You see what he's carrying. If you go back and look at when a pope dies and they say it showed him laid out in state, he carries a crook and a flail. His crown is the same crown as the pharaohs in ancient Kemet. They're copying everything that we are. Everything. All right, let's go because we got a few minutes. All right, this is the temple of Hatshepsut, who was the female pharaoh who had over 2,000 monuments built to her greatness. And she was one of the ones in her military genius. And I said she, in her military genius, who went all over the place and looted everything. She was a badass. And ended up falling. She was the one who came up with contraception. She developed contraception because she didn't want to get pregnant. And it consisted of a lotus flower, which is a flower that grows along the Nile, and the dung or mess from a crocodile. And she would insert it, make the vagina acidic, so that if a man, whoever she decided to sleep with, decided he was going to release himself in her, she could not have a child. She was no joke. 2,000 monuments built to her greatness in the less than 30 years that she reigned. 2,000. And people were scared of her. The person that supposedly took her life was one that would sleep with. He slept with her and slept with her. They paid her to take because she was that ruthless. He paid her to sleep, and then he took her life. But she took the life of her husband for him. Where the guy took his life, took the throne. She was ruthless. No joke. And there are others. Oh, we talk about Cleopatra. Get out of here with that. This one right here, that's Hatshepsut. Yeah, you ain't messing with her. There ain't nobody messing with her. All right, let's go. All right. So these are parts of the Colossus from Cush. And as you can see, what's left of them, they are huge. and they're looking up the Nile. Now, you have some people who are of the thought and the idea that they're looking up in the stars. No, they're not. Because then you're sitting there listening to people like Graham Hancock that say people came from the stars and blah, blah, blah. And there's no evidence of it. There's no evidence of it in Kemet. There's no evidence of it in the solar, in any of the pyramids or the pyramid texts. And then they show this one particular picture that's a disc, and it's got these hands that are reaching down, which are sun rays, because this is a depiction of Ra. But people want to say that it's alien technology. The beginnings of the Nile are in the Hapi River are in the mountains. So of course I'm looking up where I come from. I'm not looking up where because it flows down. So that means in the curvature of the earth, right? The mountains are here and Kemet is down this way. So I'm looking where I come from. I'm looking up the Nile, even though the water flows down. I'm looking up the Nile, where I come from. All right, let's go to the next one. So this is Ramesses II. Clearly a black man. Now, this is his skeleton or his mummy after they uncloaked it or whatever. Probably over 6,000 years old. That's Ramesses. That's in your story. That's Moses' brother. Now, you can't give that type of length of it had to be older than 6,000 years. Now, if we say that even the Torah or the Talmud is in the beginning of the Israelis or Israelites is 5,000 to 6,000 years old, and Christianity's got to be let's say 6. All right, let's say 6,000 years old. Christianity has got to be, since it's the child of no, it can't be that old because Islam is not that old. So Christianity's got to be no more than 2,000 years old. So Islam is 800, I'll say 1,000, and so they can't no more than maybe 2,500 years. And we're talking about minimally if he was existed 6,000 years ago, Moses couldn't exist. You adopted a story, but he couldn't exist because then that means Christianity is older than Judaism. That's not how it goes. It goes Kemet, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And they all have similar stories. So instead of calling Abraham, you call him Ibrahim and Islam.
I'm gonna go back and check on
it. Yeah, you got to go back and check.
I know a lot of people come with peace and blessing on Prophet Muhammad over 1,500 years ago, 1,400. They try to say he brought Islam. I mean, well, he was to him. But what people forget,
Bilal, the Ethiopian, is one who brought Islam in the prayer to Muhammad.
Yeah, he called to Adon. And Bilal was Ethiopian. So
right.
So it was Ethiopian. So, but we're going to get it together.
Yeah. So even in Mecca, they have tomb for Muhammad, and right next to his tomb is Bilal's.
Right.
Made out of perfect black rock.
Right.
But, they can't say nothing about that because then you take away what Prophet Muhammad was supposed to mean. Do your thing, no problem. But still, at the end of the day, you better understand oppression is oppression, no matter what your ism is.
I mean, when it's put on, you get facts. Definitely.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, this is the last one. This is another one of Hatshepsut's temples. Now, if you tell me that you looking at that temple, and I wish we could blow it up, but we can't. That's all right. We will. We'll figure it out the next time. The intricate way that it was built. How the people would know knowledge, wisdom, and understanding can put something like that together, and it still exists to this day. So make sure when y'all go to DC, you understand that it's a black city designed by a black man who his name is Benjamin Banneker, and I know most of y'all should know that basic information. And he designed it off of the city of Memphis, which is in ancient Kemet. All right, we could be good on the slideshow. We'll add more to it. We'll continue to add more to it. I want to see if there's anything, anybody else has any questions or whatever. We can go and Ishmael, the son of Hagar and Abraham. Got it. Egypt did not worship the Nile. Egypt worshiped nature. Okay, so we're not going to say, well, okay, let's say that if that's the case, that's fine, because the Nile gave life. Just like you as a mother or father should be worshipped as well, because you give life. Okay, well, I think somebody may have a couple things up further if we can go look real quick. And we're not sitting around there talking about no, that's if you into, we ain't battling and fighting about. We talking about truth, not about what you believe. I don't care nothing about what you believe. Yeah, because inside your belief, as if you dig deep enough, you find the truth. And at the end of the day, even if we follow the Christianity, and that's cool, I don't have no issue with that. But you better understand where it comes from. It was born from ancient Kemet. Period. It's like Judaism born from ancient Kemet. It's like Islam born from ancient Kemet. It's all born from it. Oh, it's Persia. No, they want to say Mesopotamia is older. No, it's not. They do anything in order to make sure that you denigrate African people. Period. That's it. Okay. I'm not responding to that because it's about truth, and that's a belief. And that's okay. And you can have that. You just better understand the oppression and where we are oppressed in our minds, and how we trying to get out of this oppression in our minds so we can be through upliftment. However you want to do it, it's however you want to do it. And I do it a different way, and I ain't knocking nobody to do something different. But I'm not arguing with somebody about something that you don't do no research on. That's belief. I'm not arguing belief. I'm arguing facts. I'm discussing facts. I'm not arguing with anybody because people are not worth me arguing about.
I guess I'll be it then.
Yeah, how about that? And we believe you all. We trust and believe. We love you all. We're glad you all joined us. Next time we'll be back with more facts. This is Uncle Mick and his little brother, the professor. We appreciate y'all. This is Black Watch. Peace.